This video is about how I discovered a method for reducing muscular tension while simultaneously increasing flexibility and mobility, building strength, and calming anxiety. I sometimes call this method neuromuscular restructuring because it involves both your nervous system and your musculoskeletal system. Many of the principles behind it came from Edwin Ertel, YouTube channel Scope of Life, and Ara Westerberg, YouTube channel Vava Fitness. And while this video is predominantly about how I discovered this method, you're totally welcome to check out my channel and you'll find exercises that will help you implement it to improve your own life. First, I need to state who this method is for. Neuromuscular restructuring is for people who experience chronic muscular tension in the form of baffling syndromes such as tight hamstrings, low back pain, anterior pelvic tilt, stiff neck, rounded shoulders, even things like carpal tunnel, plantar fasciitis, cramping calves, and sincerely almost any tight muscle or tendinopathy syndrome you can think of. I expect that one day this method could transcend traditional stretching and strengthening methods. Here's how I discovered it. After dealing with muscular tension in the form of the symptoms I just mentioned for 12 years of my life since I was 18, and getting almost no help from even the most esteemed doctors and physiotherapists from around the world, finally, in July of 2017, when living in Medellin, Colombia, I stumbled on a YouTube channel called Vava Fitness, run by Ara Westerberg from Finland, and within 2 weeks I'd purchased his training course, Movement 20XX, and signed up for his coaching program. Over the next 6 months, Ara and I improved my conscious awareness of my musculoskeletal system. I discovered muscles and joint articulations that I didn't even know existed. My stability, balance, and coordination improved, as did my confidence in my physical abilities. However, I'd had only slight improvements in flexibility, and I still had a lot of tension and muscular pain, as my muscles and joints had not yet begun releasing. That changed one day in approximately January 2018, living in Warsaw, Poland, when I typed the phrase developmental movement, meaning movement the babies do as they develop, into YouTube and found a hidden gem by a virtually unknown YouTuber, Alicia Patterson, who to this day has only 5 videos and 206 subscribers. Before demonstrating the movement you're watching me do, which basically involves rocking your whole body back and forth using your foot to generate the movement, she warned that it could trigger repressed memories. While that was intimidating, I went for it, and sure enough, it triggered a repressed memory. If you're already feeling like that's a bit too woo-woo for you, then you should probably abort mission right now and go watch something safe for normies like politicians or celebrities, because we're only just getting started and this rabbit hole goes much deeper. Whether you already believe what I'm saying or you're at least a little curious, let's proceed. The repressed memory was basically lying in a cot crying and feeling fear. Fear of what? I'm not sure. How crazy is that? And at the exact time I saw that memory appear in my mind's eye, I also felt the exact fear of that memory's moment, and I also felt a small shift and release in my lumbar spine, just a very small one, though very pleasant and relaxing. Naturally, seeing as the reason I was doing these exercises was to loosen up and release my musculoskeletal system, I wanted to know more about developmental movement, so I searched again on YouTube, and that's when I discovered Edwin Ertel via his YouTube channel Scope of Life. Just a quick note, don't get too focused on this developmental movement concept. It's only a small part of the puzzle, as you'll see. The developmental movement he was recommending was rolling from the stomach to the back, then from the back to the stomach, always without the assistance of the hands or feet. When I did this one, wow, I mean, my core muscles must not have activated in that way for a very, very long time. I suddenly felt myself inspired to try a few funny exercises that came to my mind. I lay belly up on an exercise ball for 20 to 30 minutes at a time. I did a controlled lay down from a seated position so slow that it took over 5 minutes. Here's me doing a sped up version of that movement. And although I'd done exercises of a somewhat similar style before, something was different this time. I found myself suddenly having these repressed memories come up. There'd always be 3 things that happened simultaneously. 1, a sudden release of muscular tension, localized to a small, specific area. 2, a feeling of fear or other negative emotion. And 3, a vision of a repressed memory. And when I say repressed, I don't necessarily mean forgotten. I simply mean not dealt with. Those three things usually happened in that order, although they were very close together to the point where they seemed to overlap. I won't go into the repressed memories or negative emotions that I experienced because they're personal, but let me suggest something to you. If there are issues from your past that either bug you or even haunt you, there's a good chance that the emotion has not, like I said, been dealt with, and it's potentially holding you back in life. I didn't fully understand this at that moment. All I knew was that I had to explore it further immediately. I'd recently met a guy who'd been raving about his experiences at a 10-day Vipassana retreat. Basically, you go off to some isolated area, maybe with a monk as a guide, and meditate and do not much else for those whole 10 days, and supposedly you have all these epiphanies and realizations about yourself. And while I couldn't really be bothered going to do one of those with all the travel and just whatever, I decided to have my own at-home Vipassana retreat. So for 10 days I stayed home, ate not much else other than McDonald's and other trash takeaway, listened to Alan Watts, the British philosopher, talk about Zen Buddhism on YouTube, and meditated on my body whilst here and there doing any exercises I felt compelled to do. And as I experimented with more exercises, I began to notice patterns in what was effective, and I found myself using a method that I would, almost 1 year later, begin to refer to as neuromuscular restructuring. As I mentioned, neuromuscular because this method involves both your nervous system and your muscular system. So let me demonstrate now what I mean by involving both the nervous system and muscular system. Here's what many of the exercises looked at that stage. Here's me simply sitting with my arm resting, palm up beside me. However, I'd realized that what I'd always called resting isn't truly resting at all when you have muscular tension. See, inside your muscles is a network of nerves, the somatic nervous system, and you have conscious control over this part of your nervous system. In fact, your somatic nervous system is also called the voluntary nervous system. And pay attention to this next thing I say because it's really key to the whole thing. If you have muscular tension, it's because your voluntary nervous system is commanding your muscles to tense. One more time because it's just so central to this thesis. If you have muscular tension, it's because your voluntary nervous system is commanding your muscles to tense. Basically, your mind is tensing your muscles. So back to me sitting with my arm relaxed, except I realized that it's not relaxed because there is tension. If it were truly relaxed, it would fall much softer onto the surface below it. And as I accepted that fact, I meditated on my arm while I did things like squeeze my bicep as hard as I could for 10 seconds, then relax it, squeeze my hand for up to 10 seconds, then relax it, rotate my arm inward and squeeze that, then relax, rotate outward, squeeze that extremely hard, then relax. I'd hold my arm up just a fraction of a centimeter. I'm talking like 2 millimeters off the surface for a couple of minutes or even for up to 10 minutes and then relax. And the whole time I would stay in an extremely meditative state. And I would stay in this extremely meditative state, playing with my arm muscles and observing them consciously for 30 minutes to an hour, just on one small area. And I would experience many tiny releases of tension, meaning my mind would let go of the tension in my arm. And sometimes when the release was significant, there would be this sudden rush of emotion and a repressed memory. I came to, of course, believe that repressed memories and emotions are, in a way, stored beneath, if you will, the tension in muscles. After 10 days, I'd explored many parts of my body and I'd found envy, disgust, contempt, shame, guilt, revenge, rejection, sadness, anger, fear, and so on, in places that I'd never expected. And also after 10 days, I was more mobile and flexible than I'd ever been in my life. And I came to the conclusion, which is the message of this video, that tension in the mind and tension in the muscles really go together. Well, this video is simply about my initial experience with this method. Since having this experience almost 1 year ago, I've consulted more with Egwin Ertel and Era Westerberg, and many of their techniques have gone into building this method for myself into something extremely effective. If you check out my YouTube channel more, and if you're watching this video as a YouTube ad, that would simply mean clicking Visit Advertiser to go to my channel. You'll find many exercises and principles for applying this method to your own life. You'll also be able to find links to the YouTube channels of Era Westerberg and Egwin Ertel, whom I mentioned in this video. And I feel with all three of these channels in your life, you'll make considerable progress improving your body and mind over the coming months, weeks, even days, maybe even today. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and I highly appreciate you watching all the way to the end.